Hey, thanks for clicking the video. This is my Dead by Daylight and FNAF Spotlight concept. But just so you know, this is part of a playlist where I play through the original FNAF trilogy with my live commentary. If you want to see the playthroughs that formed this video, those videos are out now, so give them a watch. Alright, let's talk about my chapter. In this interview with Mark Rosewater, he has asked, which Planeswalker do you think would make the best Magic card designer? And rather than the expected choices of some sort of blue-aligned Planeswalker, blue being associated with engineering, designing, system, wit, and overall intelligence, he says this.
Mark, which Planeswalker would you most want to have on a design team?
On a design team?
Yeah.
Yes.
I think Chandra would be a good designer.
Ooh, why?
Oh.
Why do you think so?
Like she can tap into inner emotion and a lot of good design comes from sort of like designing from your heart. And I think Chandra would design from her heart. So.
Oh my
Yeah.
gosh.
Aw.
Okay,
That's a great answer.
you're designing from...
For a while I've been of the homebrewing opinion that without having access to a dev copy of Dead by Daylight, where you can punch in some basic stats, designs, and quickly see if they feel right or wrong, it's very hard to put forward a design for a killer without making it too strong or weak. And hearing this belief from Rosewater just further solidified my approach of hitting the feel of a mechanic, the emotions that are involved with a certain character. It's more about hitting the satisfying chords, where the parts of a killer's source media resonates within Dead by Daylight. Alien, for example, is the apex predator of the universe, and it arguably should have the facehugger in its game, as it's such a key aspect of Alien movies. But a killer that basically executes the first survivor struck would maximize faithfulness to the source, but utterly shatter any idea of game balance. Imagine Victor. Now imagine that Victor's pounce triggers a Mori and upgrades him to Stage 2 Victor. However, I'd argue there's a world where behavior prioritized the facehugger life cycle as a gameplay feature. Consider that Myers for a long period was stuck in Stage 1 at the start, and then eventually builds up to the formidable Stage 3. My thought process was, what if we really pushed that power curve over the course of a game to the extreme? The same kind of gameplay as Judith's Tombstone, struggling the whole game until a large, unstoppable crescendo. In my world, the facehugger would have an utterly pathetic pounce, but once you get a good hit, you then kill survivors. You could be a non-hooking killer who needs to pounce to hit 3 times, getting knocked away in a struggle the first 2 times, and on the 3rd pounce, you Mori the survivor, chest burst your way out, and then spend time waiting to molt into the alien. And instead of this strong base but flamer vulnerable alien that we have right now, we can now have an alien drone with some real punch, because it struggles throughout an abysmal early game, an almost unfun chore of an early game for the alien. Is it fun? Is it balanced? Hard to say. Is it on flavor? Yeah. And one of my favorite killers, Onryo? For a horror villain who appears so little in their own movie, but the crushing deadline of 7 days being utterly vital. Have any of you actually sat down and counted how often the number 7 comes up in a kit? Seriously, Dead by Daylight often does things in just multiples of 6 or 8 or 12 or whatever. I love that they threw away the consistency between the killers and just said, yeah, nah bruv, they gotta be 7s, just make them into 7s, who cares? So now that I've stalled enough, let's hop into my hypothetical FNAF chapter. So playing the first 3 Five Nights at Freddy's games, the first struggles comes from the difference in approaches between the 3 titles. FNAF 1 feels like having 2 giant bouncers both cornering you in a phone booth, an overbearing, loud, foreboding standoff. Eventually, you're forced into a bit of a cycle that pleases the weird underlying systems of the game. You pretty much cannot beat this game unless you constantly pull up the cam on Freddy specifically, otherwise his rage meter builds up. FNAF 2 is the most tightly designed game. It feels much more responsive, the sounds in the environment make more sense. The feel leans more towards nimbly ducking past the animatronics. The majority of faces you see are homogeneous. They pop out of somewhere and kill you if you don't grab your mask in time. But some animatronics are highly differentiated, mainly Old Bonnie and Chica, who don't even give you a fair chance to react, and sadly, while they form an iconic part of the game's difficulty, they also force the player into a simple dance of winding the music box and swapping back into the mask without looking, rather than checking and pulling up the mask reactively. For me, the experience was cheapened by this. I would have possibly added an animatronic that needed a different use of the mask, such as one that needs you to flick the mask instead of holding it on, making reacting to the threats more of the focal point. Five Nights at Freddy's 3 is the most distinctly flavoured game. It's also the one that the FNAF fans feel the most unified in bringing to Dead by Daylight, voicing Springtrap as their killer chapter pick. Springtrap brings a horror that echoes Michael Myers, especially that iconic scene that I mentioned towards the start of this series. He's perfectly coloured and textured to blend in with the Fazbear fright camera outputs. Starting nights, the player struggles to see him in the screens, as sometimes it's just his hand that appears to the side of the monitor. Even his eyes are rings of white with pinprick pupils, blending into the monitor static. Even if you have those screens memorized, you're forced to apprehensively wait for the static to clear, wasting precious tenths of a second trying to spot him. He moves damn near silently, and genuinely surprises you on the regular, sometimes crossing the map with startling efficiency and speed. Also, fuck his hallucinations, they're so fucking hard to manage! And here I'm forced to pick which flavour of FNAF should be prominent in my chapter, a contentious topic by itself. Brainstorming possibilities, my first draft of basic gameplay elevator pitches grew to 16 different designs, with a split between FNAF 1, FNAF 3, and sorry FNAF 2, you are my favourite, but you're also a bit of a letdown for the player once we realise that we only have one gameplay loop. FNAF 1 also does this, but I feel that the atmosphere of heavy, brutal sounds, which sometimes lean into dreamlike quality with carnival sound bites appearing in the background, the sheer pedigree of being the entry that launched 1,000 merchandising SKUs, earns Freddy from FNAF 1 as being my one true option for my Five Nights at Freddy's Dead by Daylight chapter. But while I did come to my definitive design, I have to talk about my Springtrap design as well, so we'll go through both. So Springtrap's excellent appearance in FNAF 3 is tricky, built upon very specific visual design which enables him to blend into the set of Fazbear's fright, making him hard to spot and sneaking up on the player in unexpected ways. While there won't be a way to have Springtrap blend into Dead by Daylight's game maps, we can try to evoke the feeling of Springtrap suddenly being a lot closer than you expected. Springtrap's M2 is Lurch. Click M2 and two things happen at the same time. First, you dash forward at a very high speed and travel 60 meters across the map. There's a little control over your turning, but not much. This one dash goes further than a Blight dash and has less control. Secondly, during the dash he becomes undetectable for the duration. Lurch is meant as a map traversal repositioning tool, and not as a looping tool. To emphasize this, after the dash is complete, Springtrap goes through a 1.75 second period of greatly reduced movement speed, akin to other power whiffs like Nurse Fatigue or Legion's Fatigue. There's no attack and no way to lurch a shorter distance, except by hitting an obstacle, and getting the opportunity to lurch onto a survivor will not necessarily be useful due to the fatigue state that follows every dash. The power is strictly to increase map pressure, from being able to check distance ends, return to a hook, or otherwise approach from an odd angle. 3 seconds following a lurch dash and fatigue, you continue being undetectable. If a survivor sees you distantly hooking a friend, looks away to check on another friend on Kindred, and then suddenly loses sight of you when they look back and you're suddenly upon them without a terror radius, then that's the correct feeling that Springtrap evokes. Survivors should feel like they cannot take their eyes off your position or risk being suddenly taken by surprise by your silent lurch. And if you're going to attempt to land on a survivor working on a generator, you'll want to either take a strange angle or capitalize on a line of sight blocker, as the dash, while quiet, is an 8-foot animatronic moving across the map like a motorbike. It's a clear signal for the survivors to stealth away if their eyes are peeled. There was an idea to have some sort of placeable security cameras for the survivors, but considering that this dash has no damaging capabilities, no ability to adjust cancel on the fly, I feel this power, coupled with a sensible cooldown, is enough. And this way, the power is uncomplicated. Yeah, I've seen how survivors place alien flamers. You fuckers can't be trusted with killer tools. It's too much of a balancing quagmire. And it recreates that moment where Springtrap dinkles his way across the security window.
Hello?
Come here. You're not here. This one's off. Oh god, alright. Is that you? I feel this creates a killer with a low power in their base kit. A lot of moderately strong utility can be added via add-ons to create interest in the builds. So Freddy is my official pick of which killer I would bring to Dead by Daylight, and I very much wanted to make this iteration to be one that evokes the original Five Nights at Freddy's. I went through so many brainstorming sessions, but each time I couldn't come up with a better idea than my first. I had to keep an open mind as I played. I needed to be willing to experience and feel things the FNAF series had to offer, even if this was a set of games I would never willingly pick to play on my own time. This was for the overall project, but I couldn't treat the action of playing these games like ticking off boxes for the project. I needed to immerse myself in the feeling of FNAF 1. And of all the things that made me fearful in FNAF 1, the sound bites hounding my ears, the shadowy figures inching closer, the quickly expiring power, the deafening jump scares, one thing felt worse than the others. When Bonnie and Chica have you cornered. They are upon you. This is the most dangerous part of the game. Look away and they might make their move, but look away you must. Freddy and Foxy need to be appeased, and making those camera checks with the door locked only saps your power all the faster. They don't need to run, they don't need to lunge, they don't need to swing a weapon. They have found you, and that's now your life. This is the feeling. You're backed into a corner in a stalemate, and they are so close you can feel their breath on your sweat-drenched face. Well, if they needed to breathe, that is. And if you want to evoke that feeling, then it becomes very obvious the kind of power that we needed. Freddy is a 4.6 meters per second, 32 meter terror radius killer. Along with Freddy spawns Bonnie and Chica. You begin in the control of Freddy, moving around as you please. Bonnie and Chica move around the map at a very slow walk. Quite simply, they mimic the movements of Nemesis's zombies. Instead of meandering in random directions, they pathfind their way towards survivors. However, a range of paths in varying efficiency are planned and picked randomly to introduce some variety. Nemi zombies are random, but loud noises and most other sound cues will attract them, so eventually they start milling around critical gens if things go well. Bonnie and Chica, however, definitely make slow progress towards survivors. Strictly speaking, they're less likely to intercept a chase due to their movement speed. To manage Bonnie and Chica, it's very simple. If you have your camera positioned to stare at them, they freeze in place. That's it. There's nothing else to them. I mean, have you ever seen the animatronics move while looking at them? I certainly haven't. So what can Freddy do? Well, on a long cooldown, I'm thinking around 45 to 60 seconds-ish, Freddy can choose to swap control with either Bonnie or Chica. The transition is very fast, like Unknown. Also, do you recall the moments in FNAF when the cameras go dim when the animatronics move? Those moments I fucking love. In a game where monitoring positions of the threats is the entire strategy, just killing the lights momentarily is such sweet cruelty. So when transitioning between bodies, the survivors all suffer from dredge-reduced lighting for a fraction of a second, mimicking this effect of the FNAF cameras failing. The radius is a lot tighter, so for a split second you can't see more than a meter around your survivor body. Imagine your friend is being chased by Freddy, and you're monitoring Bonnie nearby, locking them down. You've locked them down via line of sight, but you can't look away to see if Freddy approaches. Then suddenly, the map goes dark for a split second. When the lights come back on, Bonnie is already marching towards you. The heartbeat starts playing, and now you're running. And that's it. When you swap bodies, Freddy's body becomes functionally exactly like the other uncontrolled animatronics. He'll start to approach a survivor and be stopped by looking at him. So you'll majority of the time have an animatronic fairly close to another survivor, making traversal across the map somewhat better. The main meat of this power is simply the omnipresence. In the same way that Dota's Meepo has a strength that's hard to assess, due to having a unique set of additional freely moving bodies, or how Twins is empowered by being allowed to occupy two places at once, The power of Freddy cannot really be underestimated. Having Chica and Bonnie approach from two different directions becomes something that cannot be handled. Dropping a pallet doesn't kill them, it just separates you. If the killer player shepherds you into another animatronic, it could potentially put you in unwinnable scenarios. Now, if the power laid out here wasn't enough to kill reliably, I would 100% give the killer player some sort of ability to create additional camera blackouts, because I love them so much. Keep in mind, the darkness gives the survivors 1 meter of vision. It's a split second only, but in the middle of a loop this could be leveraged in a killer's favour, obviously. So this is a killer that teleports, but with many asterisks attached to the ability, which is on a long cooldown. But it's definitely not spirit levels of movement power. And we're not doing exposed or undetectable gameplay, but we are doing something which, in compensation for those tried and true methods of killing, will be cruel. Imagine getting it down, carrying that survivor to a hook, then changing possession to another animatronic already kind of nearby another survivor, and in your wake you've left behind a bodyguard to watch the hook. To be clear, once you leave a body behind, it starts looking for a survivor, and the hooked one doesn't count, so it's going to walk away. I wouldn't have the animatronic watch the hook once control is left, but having it start nearby at least can lead to it disrupting healing under the hook, or make unhooking tricky in tight hallways. Again, this is not a dashing, zoning, exposing, poisoning killer or anything, but we're getting information, teleporting to relevant areas, and leaving behind sluggish zombies that are difficult to shake off. So Freddy should have a wildcard playstyle that can vary in effectiveness. Sometimes you'll feel quite underpowered. Other times you'll push a survivor into getting clotheslined by Chica, who is around the corner. And that's it. I know it's not the most exciting power ever, but for me it's so on flavor. Multiple animatronics with parts of the game that devolve into staring matches and waiting for an animatronic to leave slowly. That to me is the FNAF that should come to Dead by Daylight. Now let's talk about perks. Our first killer perk, System Quirks. Whenever your aura is revealed to a survivor, System Quirks activates. As long as System Quirks is active, all generators not being repaired by a survivor will immediately and automatically regress its repair progress at 150% of the normal regression speed. As long as System Quirks is active, repair speeds are reduced by 10%. This perk has some significant oomph behind it. As a perk which grants regression and slowdown without asking you to perform any activation actions like hooking or kicking, this makes the perk attractive. However, the activation requirement is practically out of your own control. Killer aura reading is not very popular at all, and once a survivor who can aura read the killer understands what's going on, they can simply stop triggering it in most circumstances. One of our other perks, however, makes System Quirks viable. Our next perk, the Bite of 87. When you are stunned by any means, Bite of 87 activates. The next time a survivor is put into the deep wound state by a basic attack, they are put into the dying state instead. This perk then goes on cooldown for 70 seconds. This is likely the most powerful perk of the three here. Overriding an off-the-record or dead hard completely rewrites the course of a game. It does also steamroll right through the base kit endurance that survivors receive when getting off the hook. So obviously, the usefulness is clear. In my opinion, the activation requirements are fair. A particularly bad survivor would go down before a stun, thus starving the advantage at the start. Secondly, you could infer its presence with a killer refusing a free hit. That's a big sign that they may be wanting to use this perk. Lastly, the long cooldown that begins counting after the triggering attack, and you can only reactivate it by getting stunned after that 70 seconds is over. I feel a normal killer could only trigger this twice a game, once early and once late. Also, when triggered once, survivors do have the option to just never stun the killer again. Pre-dropping is a real and valid tactic. Squeaky Nose. Whenever you are stunned by any means, reveal your aura, and all survivor auras within 16 meters of you for 7 seconds. And here's what makes System Quirks viable. Killer-determined aura reading for the survivors. For a while years ago, I was obsessed with what I was calling XL perks, or extra large perks. Imagine Enduring. Now imagine a more powerful Enduring, but it costs 2 perk slots. Later on, the Knight's Hubris was added, And really, this is what I meant by an XL enduring. Perks that very clearly pair up for synergy, doubling down on one triggering event. Squeaky Nose and System Quirks are very clearly meant to be paired up. This does also open the door for a new kind of perk value, perks that only trigger if the survivors can see your aura, and giving them aura reading against their will. Third option. Third option. Third option. Third option. Third option. Third option. What about the other way? Another way? What does he mean? You know what I mean. What is it that FNAF fans crave the most? A new animatronic. An absolutely insane possibility, but pretty much every Five Nights at Freddy's game introduces a new animatronic, with a backstory, and new horror survival challenges, and more questions than answers. One of the most wild and unprecedented possibilities for FNAF and Dead by Daylight is a new animatronic in the chapter. I think there's no shot that it happens, but let me paint this picture for you. Imagine if Scott Cawthon, as a co-writer, collaborates to design a new animatronic with a new backstory, and it's FNAF universe canon? People would shit their minds. Imagine a new animatronic from a new pizzeria. Maybe it's our next movie tie-in. Maybe it was an animatronic that wasn't designed by William Afton. One rift with journal entries centered on this new animatronic, and it's over. You will have successfully activated the neurons of all the Five Nights at Freddy's fans. As above, I don't think that they do that now. But on return to FNAF next year, however, that could be fucking crazy. Mike Schmidt is a survivor possibility that I am most excited to see. As a movie tie-in, it makes him quite likely to fill the survivor role for the chapter. But he also has a nice arc, hellbent and preoccupied with uncovering the truth surrounding the cold case of his dead little brother, Garrett. There's a touch of the supernatural as he tries to reach answers surrounding the incident via lucid dreaming exploration, but meets with the ghosts of other dead children. And he is faced with the consequences of his actions. While living in the past, searching for Garrett, he realizes the neglect he's brought about to Abby, and how it affects her day to day. Survivor perks. Big bro! Whenever you take a protection hit, all survivors within 16 meters of you gain vision of all the pallets and vaults within 64 meters of them for 5 seconds. Your typical protection hit perk, meant to pair with Medal of Man and help other people get away more cleanly. Lucidity. When you become injured, you become cursed and broken for 45 seconds. While cursed, the nearest generator, survivor, window, pallet, and the killer is revealed to you. Starting the run gains 25% haste for 2 seconds. Gain 40 seconds of exhaustion. I'm excited to bring a new kind of cursed payoff, like Soul Guard before this. The perk cuts off your opportunity for other more impactful exhaustions, but the aura reading you get in return is quite extreme. It's obviously a way to proc cursed on yourself, which actually provides some reliability to Soul Guard. This may make Soul Guard strong, but you are committing another perk which prevents a better exhaustion. Reassuring voicemail. After working a generator while within the killer's terror radius or lullaby for 10 seconds, you scream without alerting the killer. Your repair speed is then increased by 15% for 5 seconds. Hear non-reassuring things, become afraid, and work faster. Five Nights at Freddy's to a T. Hello everyone. You've made it. I've made it. I've made it to the end. These videos took 7 months. I started a new career. The scope was huge, but in October, it was so manageable. I had different things going on. This video survived the computer getting sick, graphic card upgrades, and then like the FNAF announcements started coming out, and I thought I was going to be too late. And while it became distressing and painful to get these out, I'm really happy that I could do it. And I'd like to take this moment to really and truly thank Scooty Booty. She was a huge supporter during this, and we both like designing chapter concepts, and part of our friendship has formed around our excitement for making them. And I don't know if I could make these, if I could do it without their encouragement and or helping me crack a writer's block, so really, from the bottom of my heart, thank you, Scooty Booty. I can't tell you how much it all meant to me. Subscribe to Scooty Booty, check out their channel. They're just wonderful, they rock. They fucking rock.